How'd that happen? Now, I'm sure it doesn't come as a shock to any of you when I say I love comic books. That love, however, does not stop at superheroes. Of course, they do make up the bulk of what I read. That's just kind of unavoidable in this industry. However, there's so much more out there. Indie comics, graphic novels, and entire comic companies that just go entirely overlooked. One day I'll get to those more niche stories in comics. Today, however, I want to introduce you to some of my favorite comic book franchises that just so happen to not be comic franchises. Basically, I want to talk to you about the franchises that you didn't know were comic books. Yeah, that's clickbait. Anyway, Transformers! If you're a Transformers fan, then there's already a solid chance you're well aware of the brand's history with comics. Thanks in no small part to a YouTuber, Chris McFeely, whose entire channel is dedicated to shedding a spotlight on everything Transformers. This includes their extensive and expansive history in comic books. From the original Marvel comics in both the UK and US, to Dreamwave Productions, to the modern IDW works, that sadly ended, and all the way to Skybound's new and exciting reboot. For as long as Transformers has been a brand, there have been comics that tie into the cartoons and movies to tell their own original stories. And the stories that I want to talk about today are the tales that IDW Publishing made. So, heads up, we're going to be talking about IDW stories a lot. Like a lot more than I thought we would. For over a decade or so, IDW has published Transformers comics with great success. And looking at the stories they're responsible for, it isn't any wonder why. General audiences may unintentionally recognize their work from comic tie-ins and other media, but people who are into comics will know them for their iconic IDW universe. The IDW comics began in 2005 and lasted all the way until November 2018, ending with a magnificent climax to the wonderful world these comics built. That's over 13 years of comics, with every single writer and artist coming in to give their A-game. Because of their talent and passion, the stories these books told would go on to influence the brand as a whole. To this day, there's a strong fanbase for all these iconic stories and collections. To start getting into it, the IDW universe is split into two separate phases. Phase 1 is your more standard story between Autobots versus Decepticons in the war. There's a lot of good and interesting stuff here, like Megatron's origins and spotlight issues for specific characters. And it ends with two of my favorite issues in the entire comic, which come together to form the Chaos Theory duo. Then we get to Phase 2, which literally starts off with the death of Optimus Prime, before he comes right back, but that's honestly okay because it's Phase 2 when this universe starts really nailing down its stories. Damn near every good thing you hear about this universe comes from this phase, and that shouldn't be shocking. Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye, is by far my favorite Transformers story ever. As in, including the various cartoons, animes, games, and live-action movies. More Than Meets the Eye, with the help of earlier IDW, is the reason why Megatron is easily one of my favorite villains in fiction. The same deal with Optimus Prime, Rodimus, and Tarn. I can't recommend More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light enough. They are too good, and represent the very best that the Transformers brand can be. Now let's keep this train a-rolling with the next franchise, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's fairly common knowledge that this franchise spawned from a black and white comic book from Mirage Studios. It was a much darker tale, reminiscent of Daredevil stories at the time. The Ninja Turtles were vastly different from how we see them today, and many of these stories wouldn't see a proper adaptation until the 2003 series. But that's a story for another time, because the Turtles, like the Transformers, never really did stop having comic books. Granted, most of them were spin-offs of whatever iteration was popular at the time. Also, funnily enough, they also had a comic by Dreamwave Productions that was cancelled prematurely because of the company going bankrupt. Just like the Transformers. Hey, wait a second. Huh. I actually have an issue from this run. Neat. I'll have to read all 7 sometime. Because they got cancelled after 7 issues. Anyway, we're here to talk about what is the Ninja Turtle series under IDW. Which is still ongoing, by the way. Now, I don't have a ton to say just yet, because I literally just started reading through these comics. Of which, there are 143 issues in the main series, which is split up between a decent amount of volume releases. You have some truly iconic stories for all the Turtles, their supporting cast, villains, and... Oh! Hey! A new turtle! Now, considering I didn't hear waves of Twitter users complaining about her, I'm going to assume she's a fan favorite cause, damn! Do I like her weapon of choice? Really reminds me of Wolverine. And anything that reminds me of Wolverine is obviously good. Now there's probably a ton to get through considering this run, so why don't we bite down on something a bit more... condensed? Popular? The Last Ronin. Look, this comic is getting a video game adaptation, so I don't think I need to tell any of you just how popular this story is. These 5 issues, put into a single graphic novel, has some of the best story in any turtle media. Now, if this story weren't quite as popular as it is, or weren't getting a video game in the future, then I would be going off on spoilers. But for now, in a show of restraint, just know that this is a story all on its own. About the way revenge poisons the world and the mind. It's about the lengths we'll go to for the people we love and the people we loved. And it's also about how, despite all the bad, despite the possibility of everything being taken away, there's always a tomorrow. There's always a future, a new family worth fighting for. There's hope. And if that didn't sell you on IDW's direction for the Turtles, I don't know what will. So let's move on to my personal favorite of the bunch we're talking about today, Boom Studios' Power Rangers. Fun fact, I was going to make a full video series dedicated to these comics, though I stopped short of finishing the editing of the first video when I realized the script wasn't where I wanted. So instead, I'm going to talk about them here. And by them, I mean the first half of the line of books. The original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Go-Go Power Rangers series. What I consider part 1, or phase 1, of the Ranger comics. There's an ongoing part 2, which is just so seriously awesome right now. But Go-Go Power Rangers is my favorite full-length comic series. From start to finish, this comic is a blast to read. Due, in no small part, to having some of my favorite artists and writers on board doing some of the best work in the industry. This line of the comic focuses on the original set of Power Rangers before Tommy joins the team, pitting them up against Rita's various schemes and goons in an ever-escalating series of events, all while having a nice balance with their social lives outside of being Rangers. The Mighty Morphin comic is the sister line to Go-Go, taking place after Tommy is the Green Ranger. This is the run where you get all your huge events and character moments, and you find the stuff that put these comics on the map. Like the true standout character who brought a real sense of popularity to the comics, Lord Draken. Suddenly, Power Rangers wasn't just a show for kids that would occasionally get serious, but a book that was more willing to dedicate itself to a more serious tone and storyline. Seriously, I can't recommend them enough. But we ain't done yet. We have one more franchise to go over today. This one may actually be the most noteworthy, given the type of fandom it surrounds. Ladies, gentlemen, and my non-binary friends, let me introduce Sonic the Hedgehog. So, to no one's surprise, Sonic the Hedgehog has an extensive connection with comic books. It's about as deep as the other brands on here, probably only second to Transformers' long history. Especially considering that this franchise easily has the longest running continuity of any of these books in the form of Archie's Sonic the Hedgehog. In a series of books that were released damn near every month straight from 1993 to 2017, with too many spin-offs to count. Which is genuinely insane to me. The idea that Sonic the Hedgehog had a comic book run that lasted 20 plus years, being a direct competitor to Marvel and DC, is just wow! And then they decided to do it over again at IDW! IDW is nothing short of stellar, from the consistently stunning artwork done by tons of talented artists, to the well-crafted stories that have gone on to be some of my favorites in the entire franchise. This is the book to pick up if you're even a casual Sonic fan. I'm not entirely caught up with the book myself right now, but I've read all the way up to the end of the Metal Virus arc, and this book slaps. The first few volumes all have this lighthearted and adventurous energy that's infectious. It just feels good to read, with the artwork excelling at delivering that feeling at every turn. But don't let this lighthearted stuff fool you, because IDW Sonic has teeth hidden just around the corner. While introducing faces, old and new, the comic takes a slow and nuanced approach to ramping up the stakes and drama. No character here is as one-dimensional as they might seem at first glance, and no story beat is there without reason. Everything that happens is a direct consequence of what came before, building off of every character's actions. Then, the big arc happens, and things just spiral out of the character's control in the best way. The Metal Virus arc is an absolute masterclass, and I urge as many Sonic fans as possible to read the book, if only to read that arc. My favorite thing, though, is that there are a ton of new characters who are all fun and instantly iconic to the franchise. My favorites of those favorites are the Diamond Cutters, who are just kind of the best together. And that, my friends, are the franchises you didn't know were comic books. Look, I needed the extra clicks, okay? I'm sorry, I just needed the...
Target has been neutralized. Clickbait was successfully punished. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bravo team out.